Okay, I just thought I would give you an update of what I've been busy about over the last week. Last video I said that I'd got to go and excuse me, got to go and make some tooling up to get the inner cam bearings out. And so all I've done really, I've seen people using various things on the internet, and all I've done really, this is the a page out of the workshop manual. So this is the tool here, which is the extraction tool, the inserting tool, the plate, and then various fixings and bushings to use with the tool. So all I've done really is pretty much copied what everybody else seems to do. So I've took this piece of aluminium plate, I took the original cam support plate once I'd got it dismantled, and made two discs up with holes in the centre so that I could put them into the holes there and then transfer those holes through into my plate to get the centre distances right on the camshaft bearings. I've scalloped the top out here so that you can see in to the cam chamber once you've got this plate bolted up in place. And then there's a dowel hole here, and it just picks up on the front dowel, and the bottom dowel here, picks up on the dowels to locate it, and then the cam cover fixing screws just go into those holes there and hold it in place. Now the extraction tool is just a collapsible well, it's an expanding mandrel, but I've machined it so that I can collapse it to push it into the bearing. It's got a taper in there, and then obviously a corresponding piece that goes into the taper and expands it. That thread has a flat on it, so that once you've got it into place you can hold spanner on there to tighten that nut up to pull that in to expand it in the bearing. It is I have actually used it, so I do know that it works, but you have to make sure that that is clear, and there's enough clearance at the back of the bearing to get that in. But once you're inserting it in, you have to collapse it and push it onto the bearing like so, and push it all of the way through like so. Obviously you can't do that, but what I did was just did a little Sharpie mark on the shaft so that I knew that I was through the bearing. Once that's in place, tighten it up to pull the plunger into the back of the bearing. That's obviously then in the cam chest. So you put the plate on, bolt it up, and then you have a bushing, plain bushing on this one, which goes into the hole there. And then I was lucky enough to actually have a thrust washer just in one of my boxes. So thrust washer onto the shaft, nut, and then it's just a case of spanner on this one and tighten that one to draw the bearing out of the housing. And as I say, I have actually gone through that, so I do know that that piece works. The install tool is a variation on a theme, so but in the case of this one it's slightly different. The bearing bearing, 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 is on the tool. So the bearing in this instance sits onto there, and on here there's a shoulder machine to ensure that this goes back into the crankcase the same amount as the one I took out. So that goes onto there, and then in this one you again another thrust bearing there, but this goes in from this side and you put the plate on, bolt it up, and then as you locate it and wind in, because you're winding in, it forces the bushing, because the bushing is threaded in this instance, it forces the bushing into the plate so that you get a nice steady pushing to the camshaft bearing housing. So that's that. They do work. I have actually tried them on this, and I have actually got a video of the insert tool being used, which will come up on a later video. And again, these are shown in the workshop manual, and the idea behind these are that, and this is the new cam plate. So the idea behind those is your oil pump fits onto those, so when that's in position you put those through there into the oil pump and you tighten them, and the taper on each one of those, you'd put your two of your cap heads into here, and the idea being that you get some, well, you rotate the engine via the back wheel, and whilst it's rotating you screw those in, and the idea is it centres the pump on the crankshaft, and you keep doing that until they're tight, and then you tighten these up, and then you take those out and put the proper fixings in, and that should align the pump onto the crankshaft. Two bearing pullers, pushers, insert tools. So just finished off making those. One for that. The idea being pull those in there with the stud, so that you're pulling, because they're relieved here, so you're pulling on the outer race to pull them into the housing, and the same goes for that one there. To get those into the housings, I'm going to do that next. Interestingly, on the rear camshaft, it does in the new bearing kit comes with the inner. So this is the bearing, the old bearing. So you have the thrust washer that goes on first, but in the instructions with all of the new stuff, and on the new inner race and thrust, there's a real small O-ring, and the idea is that the O-ring goes on first into a grind groove on the camshaft, and the idea being that when this goes on, the O-ring centres this thrust face on this thrust washer, so that when you put the inner race on, everything's centred. Interestingly, when I took this off yesterday morning, there was no O-ring. Now I can only assume that that was fitted from the factory like that, because like I say, at 8,500 miles I don't believe this bike has been to pieces before. But it was interesting that there was no O-ring on there, unless that's an upgrade on the bearing kit itself. So that goes to one side. So next job is to push the new bearings into there, and then I can start rebuilding the cam assembly, and then that really, with the new bearings, I'll push the bearings into the cam chamber itself, and I can start assembling. So quick update, I thought I'd just share that with you, and then I'll get on and catch you later. Thank you for watching.